What's up, everybody? I'm Michael Fielding with the Free Academy. I'm here with Jeff Rodriguez, Jared Reyes, Magic Tran, and a few more might pop in here in a little bit. So today we were going to try to talk about what exactly the Free Academy is, because we've done a lot of things under that name so far, but never really explained it. Well, I've done it a couple times. I first tried to lay out what I meant by that phrase in my book. So the Sailboat Diaries, in my San Juan update, October 11th, 2013, I talked about why we were going to sail to this uninhabited island just to build a little habitat and then leave it a few weeks later. And why am I calling it the Free Academy? This is freedom propaganda. I'm trying to show others people a perspective. It might be foreign to some familiar to others, but probably a faded childhood memory for most. It's a way of seeing the world without judgment, open to everything and sold on nothing, an honest search for truth. And then I talked about the island for a little bit, but why does it deserve a name like the Free Academy? I said the name is another intuition pump. I made it up to help us think about learning, to force us to examine the question, what exactly is a learning institution? Could four guys on a desert island be a college campus? Well, we'll be thinking a lot, teaching and learning from one another. What else does it take? It's important to understand the hut we build is not the academy. The academy lives in our minds. Like all learning institutions, it's made of people, not buildings. Buildings are just tools we use to make our lives more comfortable, similar to websites and Google Hangouts. So that's how I kind of see this working, as just a group of people who are interested in learning whatever they want, sharing everything they're excited about, and teaching one another, learning from each other, and just using whatever tools are available to us to kind of further that goal. Whether it's a hut out in the woods, or using this newfangled technology to talk to one another. So I guess maybe I'll ask Jared, what do you think the Free Academy means to you?
Yeah, well, I love the name for a lot of reasons. Partially the simplicity, but the word free to me kind of explains everything it's about. I mean, one, it's free in a sense of, from a monetary standpoint. There's no tuition here. This is everyone's participating and contributing what they want. I love the free as in it's freedom. Ideally we attract a community and of people who are freedom and liberty minded. And the other part of the free is, I like to think of it as a blank slate, a tabula rasa, a place where hopefully, as you said in your intro, that we're willing to discuss anything from an open mind, and we're not necessarily going to take the confines of what we see in the world now and mistake that with what ought to be, if there is an ought. But we're going to take it as a blank slate and hopefully be able to discuss a lot of things and create our own ideas from a ground zero and get to share with one another whatever we see fit. And as I think we put in the About page on the website, which you guys can access at freeacad.com, everyone's a student, everyone's a teacher, and we don't need to have this awkward, very rigid distinction between who's allowed to teach us and who knows what life is about, or who knows something about a particular subject. We can all free flow those interactions continually in any given dialogue. So that's kind of what it means to me. Is it's an informal way for people to learn, and I don't want people to mistake it being informal with it being less worthy or less effective, because I would argue the opposite.
Cool. Jeff, would you like to talk about kind of what learning means to you and what you hope to get out of the Free Academy and what you've been working on?
Yeah, so I guess for me, it's I was thinking about this recently. I think about it a lot, right? I guess probably most of us do. But it's curiosity, just insatiable curiosity. Feed it. Go to town. Let it rip, man. It's fun. Follow it. And I've done a lot of that. I was just looking around. Like, I have a room full of junk. Is what it is, and I've had it since I was a kid. I've had a junk drawer of just stuff that's around that I can make things out of and build and explore and tear them apart. And I love learning. So we ran across each other when you wrote your Why I'm Leaving America article, and you know, that really struck a chord with me, and you know, especially at the time. But I've kind of learned from you also, like seeing you go out there, come back, do your thing, and living free here. That's really inspirational too. So I mean, there's different senses of the word free. I like, Jared mentioned he likes the word free. I think that got me thinking that there's free in multiple ways. There's Libris, like doesn't cost anything, and free as in beer. There's no tuition, but like stuff costs money. Like stuff costs money. It only costs you what you need to buy to pull it off. Just the resources, and you can find those all over the place, right? Like you can recycle them. We're kind of nature's ants, right? Like recycled stuff. Like there's resources all over the place. Go gather them, pull them together, and see what you can make out of it.
I love that idea. Awesome. Magic, would you like to say a little bit about what you hope to get out of the Free Academy, or what you think it means to you?
Yeah, well, I liked what everybody said so far. I definitely, I don't know if you guys knew this, but I went to college originally to become a teacher, and I found myself barely a year into it. I found out I couldn't do it because I felt like there was such a disconnect between being a teacher and kind of imposing that institutionalization on students. I didn't feel like I could be a part of that. I mean, I get that some people like that and make it work for them, but I felt like I couldn't be on that side of it. So I'm more for that whole everybody can be a teacher thing, everybody can be a student, and I embrace that idea a lot. And to me, that's what Free Academy is. And in addition to that, you got I don't know how to say it correctly, but there's already a lot of people out there doing all these things, and I felt like that's what the Free Academy could bring, is these people together. It's another forum where you can spread these ideas, and I mean, because there's communities on Kauai, that they're already bartering. They're not using money. They're actually just growing their own stuff and sharing. I mean, there's farmers markets and things like that. So there's already alternatives out there, and I think that things like the Free Academy can just bring that reality closer to people that want it. So I'm glad to be a part of this and contribute any way I can. And behind me, I'm actually in the middle of packing all of my belongings for my trip to South America right now. So
Yeah.
in addition to all that junk that you have, you realize that you don't need a fraction of it when you travel. And so that's something that I've learned over the years, and I think that other people who are trying to downsize on their piles of hoarding material, you can do it as well. Like anybody can do it. In fact, you're more free. The less things you own, the freer you are. And that's what I've learned, and that's what I want to. That's kind of the direction that I want to start, improving myself and to spread to other people who have the same problems as I've had over the years.
Cool. I like how you ended there with direction, because I think that's one thing maybe we lack a little bit, because we're just and we all have these wonderful ideas, and you also mentioned how different groups are already doing all these ideas. They're already out there. There's community gardens. There's people like Jeff working on open source hardware. There's people doing all the cool stuff, and I think, like you all said, just bringing us together and maybe giving a forum where we can share all these things that we find with one another. And I especially like the idea of the in-person meetups. Yesterday I went out to it's called First Friday. It was just potluck at a community garden, and we sat there and recognized how we'd all barely missed each other in different circles. Like there's this general circle that's kind of performance arts oriented, but a lot of them are interested in gardening too. And then there's just different kind of philanthropic philanthropic things going on, and all these people knew of each other basically, but just hadn't crossed paths yet. So that's one of the things I would really love to try to work on with this group, especially is maybe having a few meetups a year, like quarterly. Who knows? One, we can start with one, but just get everybody together in a single place where we can do a little show and tell of in person, like what we've been working on. And I know when we met up with Jeff in Austin, it was awesome to cross paths, and there's just so much more you can talk about right there in the same room and everything. And same with Magic out in Marathon. We got to have these deep discussions. So maybe something we could talk about here is when we could try to make something like that happen, like a free academy camp out, or I don't know, would y'all want to talk about kind of maybe what you're doing over the next year and where you might have some gaps to fill and might want to try to coordinate something? Like we could do it a few months in the future for sure, but Jared, how about you? What do you got on the plans?
Yeah, well, so also real quick, so for those who don't know already, you can access the site. You want to plug it real quick, of course. Freeacad.com, so like Academy, FREEACAD.com, and membership's free. Hop on there, share whatever you want to share. Like I said, this is all about a platform for anyone to share what they want to share. It doesn't have to be your content. Share a YouTube video that you loved watching. Write an essay, share an essay. It's all open, but we really want to build a community here, and it's slowly happening, so I'm excited about that. Over the next year, man, I don't know. I was going to be moving to Vancouver, Canada until about 2 weeks ago, and then that fell through. So right now, I have a bunch of ideas, and I'm not really sure where it's going to go. Planning is, you can look at it as a weak spot of mine, or maybe it's a strength that I'm not always a great planner. But some ideas on the docket right now are to maybe meet up with Adam Kokesh and help with that Earthship, because I just found, I've watched some of the videos, and I have this desire to build a house with my own hands. And it doesn't have to be a house in the sense of a suburban house in the U.S. It doesn't have to be that intricate, but just a structure that is, I guess, safe from the elements, that I'll call a home. And so the Earthship thing's really appeasing to me and interesting to me. So I may want to join out there. That's an idea. The other thing is I want to get out to New Zealand at some point, because several of us in this group here have a buddy named Sean Megan who's out there, and I just want to see New Zealand, but also want to be able to holler at Sean in person and let him show me all these mountains he's been hiking, because I'm a little envious of some of the beautiful hikes he's been up to, and I want to be able to be a part of that. So that's some ideas I'm tentatively throwing around. Also in Acapulco, so if I meet up for the Earthship, and Mike, you guys are still heading through Kokesh's homestead to get to Acapulco, maybe I'll hop in that van with you guys.
Cool. Yeah, well, real quick, since you mentioned that, my kind of last thing that's officially on my schedule is in Acapulco in February 19th through 21st. I'll be down in Acapulco, Mexico, hanging out with some anarchists and telling them some of my ideas, learning from their ideas. So it's totally a free academy campus in my mind, just a big one that's already coordinated. And I'm really excited to see everybody down there and get to talk to some of these people and see what they think and everything. How about you, Jeff? What's going on with you in the future?
I was just thinking about the dates for that for Acapulco. I hadn't made any solid plans one way or another, but I could probably make it down there. If you're swinging by Adam's place, that would be fun too, because I'd like to swing by there and give them a hand with that. Sounds like a fun project. So if you guys are stopping by Flag, that'd be a cool place to meet up. I don't know if you guys have how much van room you have, but how far is Acapulco from that's not drivable, is it, or is that Flag thing?
Flagstaff, Arizona. That's where Kokesh is doing his Earthship, and that's like north of Phoenix. I don't know. It's
like 2 hours north of Phoenix.
Yeah, it's a couple hours north.
I think so. And then, so from there, it's probably a good 1,000 or 1,500 miles to Acapulco, because it's down on the southwest side of Mexico. Um, so yeah, we're looking at getting a cheap van in San Francisco and driving all the way. So I don't know. That's
I
we
might.
might get like a
Yeah, I don't know.
weekend.
All right. Yeah, I don't know. I can fly. I could probably fly to either or fly to all. Both. Um,
Yeah,
but
there's
we
flights to Mexico
good.
City, I think, and then it's a 4-hour bus. But he said you can get it's like a nice private bus, and I don't know. I watched a little video of how to get from the airport to the bus, and it didn't seem too difficult. So
Right on.
we'll see that. Um,
I've been practicing my terrible Spanish.
yeah, necesito practicar también.
Yeah.
So,
Um,
so yeah, Jeff, you think you might be interested if we could get a group and there's van space to maybe hop in a van in Flagstaff?
maybe. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know how much room you guys have, or if that would be interesting, but possibly.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll keep in touch about that. How about you,
Okay.
Magic?
Well, I guess I just did my 2.5 month trip touring the U.S. in a
Why
car.
don't you tell everybody a little
Uh,
bit about where you went?
yeah, we pretty much went, uh, did a whole loop of the U.S. We didn't go all the way up to Maine, but we did hit New York and Niagara Falls. Sorry, am I still on? Because it looks like
Yeah, I
it's
can
slowing
hear
on my end.
you. Your video is just kind of stuck. Oh, now it's working.
Okay. So yeah, we just took
Now
didn't
it's
really
good.
get hotels.
Okay.
Yeah, I might turn off my well, I might turn off my video. I think it's lagging
Cool.
a bit
Yeah.
up the mountains.
Can hear you fine.
Um, but yeah, basically, oh, thanks. Yeah, basically just went to let's see. We started out in Asheville, North Carolina, went to DC, um, New Jersey City.
Whoa. Did y'all hear that?
Oh, was that? That's
Yeah, I
probably
did.
my phone vibrating.
It was really it was a pretty interesting sound. I would have never guessed it was a phone vibration.
Yeah, because I actually have my phone leaned up against the wall right now. And yeah, went to Niagara Falls. Didn't have a passport, so we couldn't go over to the Canada side. Went to Chicago, uh, Mount Rushmore. Which, no offense to Mount Rushmore, but if you guys aren't going to a bunch of places in the area, I wouldn't visit that myself, just by itself, unless you're really patriotic or it means a lot to you to have four white guys carved into the side of a sacred mountain. Uh, then you have after that we went to Yellowstone, Portland, hit and then went down to California, and yeah, what do we do? Went to Yosemite National Park out there, and hit San Jose. Um, Stopped at Los Angeles, flew to Hawaii, spent 17 days out in Hawaii,
Woo.
the Big Island, and went back to Los Angeles. Eventually hit um, Grand Canyon, Las Vegas, uh, Zion National Park, which is probably my favorite national park in all of the U.S. that I've been to, and Arches National Park, also in Utah, all the way to the right. Colorado, Santa Fe, and then back to Texas. So that was oh, and then after Texas, drove straight back from there to North Carolina because I've already done the Southeast so many times. So, but yeah, I mean, it's cool. The cool thing is that I've been in this country for so long, and all these things are available to us, and we just kind of, either work or something, gets in the way, and it's cool to have all this stuff available, and if you can just find time, really, and have a good enough vehicle, you can get to all these places, with little to no money at all, and sleep in the car and any pull off that you have that you can find out there. So it's yeah, you don't have to have a lot of money. I talk to a lot of people and they're like, wow, you must have had thousands, or like a lot of money to pull off a trip like that. And it's like, no, I'm not sleeping in a hotel every night, but I'm also being able to go all these places. And yeah, so yeah, that's the trip that we just got done, and now we have to change it from doing a road trip and being in a car the whole time to being, just living out of a tent and backpack. So everything that we need is now going to have to be downsized into a backpack and maybe a day bag per person. So,
Yeah, and you mind if I jump in? And as you said, my experience when describing some of my travels is the same thing. Everyone assumes traveling is this very expensive endeavor, and I think it is expensive when you're flying there, you stay at a hotel there, you visit one place, and then you fly back home, and that's your mode of travel. But when you connect all these travels, it can be pretty inexpensive. But do you mind sharing a ballpark of how much you spent for the whole trip, maybe including the flights to Hawaii, and then if you excluded the Hawaii portion of the trip? Do you mind just giving a vague idea of
absolutely. I don't have the numbers crunched right now. We were definitely under budget. We budgeted like $3,000 for the whole trip, and we definitely went under it.
Wow.
Hawaii is definitely the most expensive part because not only did we got a 600. We probably spent for both of us $700 for the round trip from Los Angeles to Oahu, but we didn't want to spend our whole time in Oahu because it's just like a big city anywhere in the U.S. Just out in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we only spent a day in Oahu, and we flew immediately to the Big Island, Hawaii, and that in addition to the tickets to get to Oahu itself, it cost another $100 per person per one way to, so that's another $400 just to get both of us from Oahu to the Big Island and back. So
Wow. Yeah.
definitely flights. Of course, after I already left Hawaii, I found out that there's island hopper where they use an actual like small plane with propeller on it, and it only costs $50 or $59. So there's definitely alternatives, but if you've never been to Hawaii before, I was like, can't you just take a ferry out? And of course, it's a lot bigger. The water channels are a lot bigger than that, and pretty much there's no ferries except for some of the smaller islands. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The tourist way of traveling is going to cost you a lot more, and in addition to that, we found a lot of people on Couchsurf who hosted us for free, and not only that, they actually like get you to live how they live, not just how a tourist live. You don't want to. I mean, personally, I don't want to go somewhere and just do the resort thing or do something I would do at home somewhere else. I want to go live how they live. Soak up some of their culture and yeah, just immerse in something different than my comfort zone. And so not only is it cheaper, but you get more experience out of it doing stuff like that.
Man, that's awesome. So just the mainland U.S. portion, you did the whole loop for, you're saying, less than $2,500 then, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, probably a lot less than that. And we got lucky because gas prices definitely dropped towards the end of the trip. So we were spending $1.59, per gallon for a good chunk of it.
Man, that's awesome.
Super cool. Makes me want to get a van so bad.
Yeah, definitely. If you're gonna buy a used vehicle, just make sure you guys know how to maintain it. We were lucky enough to have a good old Toyota Camry, good old reliable Asian vehicle that we didn't have to do any maintenance on it throughout the whole trip, and we put some good miles on it.
Man, that's awesome.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm happy to answer any other questions about that. And
yeah, I have one more, unless Mike or Jeff has a question they wanted to throw in there. What if, and this is a hard question, but if you had to boil down I'm sure you learned a ton from the trip, but if you had to boil it down and say what was maybe the biggest epiphany you had from a trip like that, what would you say it was?
Oh man, that's definitely a good question.
The biggest couple, if that's a really tough question, because I know it's probably challenging to boil it to one.
Well, one of the biggest epiphanies, I guess, is I mean, everybody is like, even within the U.S., we're so different. Each state is different, has its own thing, but we're so similar in the sense that, like back to the whole ant thing. We're just like a bunch of ants, like trying to do our own thing in this life. And you go to enough places, you realize that we're just doing the same thing in different ways. So some people are like, "Oh, my city, New York, is the greatest," or somewhere else, someone's so proud of the way they live, but really, we're all the same. And I mean, yeah, I mean, you will find different cities have different stigmas attached to them. Terrible traffic or great art here, good beer or whatever. But really, I mean, when it boils down to it, everyone's just trying to live life. So I think that was a because some people are like, I need to leave the U.S. to experience, life a different way. But I after being on this trip, I don't think that's true at all. A lot of the change is internal, and I mean, of course, some cities you just have to get out of. If you don't want to live a busy lifestyle, New York's not for you. You don't want to have to rely on public transportation. Don't go to a place like New York or Tokyo or any of that. So that's one of the epiphanies. I'd say another epiphany is I just had it a second ago. Hey, hold on real quick. We talked about the money thing already.
Yeah, I was gonna say for me, I think the biggest epiphany I had, I've done lots of travels post graduation, I guess, but the most intense cluster of them was the 9 months following graduation, where I was traveling the whole time. And I think I spent less than, and a bunch of different types of traveling, all through Europe. That was, trains and bus system and the flight over there, and then Honduras, where I just kind of got to one island via flight and then stayed there, and then the sailing trip with Michael. And I did all that for, I think, probably $5,000 or less, and I would have spent a lot less if not for traveling in a group through Europe, because I certainly stayed in a lot nicer hotels than I would have chosen to stay in on my own. But it was cool to have that type of experience too, because now next time I go to Europe, I know I definitely won't do that again. So at least I got to do it that way. But that was the big thing, I think. Well, my big travels, that was the epiphany, is as a lifestyle, it's way cheaper than people anticipate. And then number two was kind of what you already hit on too, which is even in other countries, everyone's culturally, there's some different customs, but in general, humanity as a whole seems to have very similar desires, and culturally we express them differently, but we're basically the same. And so I try and take a worldly view as much as possible, and I think those were my two biggest epiphanies personally from my traveling. But I still haven't done a mainland U.S. trip, so that was super interesting for me to hear about your loop for sure. And I know Mike did a mainland car trip a while back. Mike, do you know how much you think you spent for your whole loop?
Oh man, that's a tough one. Because at this point, at the start of it, I had a job I could do remotely, so I really wasn't keeping track. Like, money was coming in, money was going out. Like, I don't know, but it was definitely cheap because, like you guys, I didn't pay to stay anywhere. I did some friend's house and then some camping out of the truck, and but yeah, I guess one of the big lessons for me was like how much people actually enjoy having guests sometimes. Like, if you can be a good guest, like, it's you're coming into people's lives and mixing stuff up, and you often you want to go do fun things, so then they get to go do fun things. They have an excuse to, like, go see the things that they may have never even seen in their own city. So that was a really cool thing to learn, was that like people really appreciate you, as you know, if you do it right. There's ways of being a terrible guest, but there's ways of being a good guest too, and like, you know, simple things like washing the dishes or like taking out the trash for them, you know, and then people are just they love to have you come again is the best part too, and I love this idea of, you know, just having friends kind of scattered all over the country. And speak of the devil,
Hey,
this guy's
Sean.
down in New Zealand.
What's up, fellas?
What's going on,
Hey,
Sean?
Sean, how's it going?
Oh, Jeff, long time no see, dude.
Yeah, I
Going
know,
well.
right?
Eric, come to the big.
Sean, I guess I'll catch you up real quick. Oh, what's up, JG?
Uh-oh.
All right, Mike, why don't you catch Sean up real quick?
Okay, Sean, so we started off talking about kind of what the Free Academy means to us and the different ideas about kind of informal education and like on a peer-to-peer level. And I think we all just kind of expressed our excitement about how many opportunities there are to learn and learn from each other, especially. And then we kind of started talking about travels and both future plans and kind of what we've been up to. Magic just talked about his trip all over the U.S. and Hawaii, and how cheap he was able to do it too. That's something we kind of all hit on, is if you're willing to kind of rough it at some points, or just like, you know, be with friends. Anyways, there are ways of traveling cheap. Kind of what we do.
Your mic's not working, Sean. It was. No, it's not.
Oh, hold on.
How about now?
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, with like meetup.com and couchsurfing, man, if you're willing to, and like hitchhiking, just depending on how much you're willing to put yourself out there, you can do it, you know, as cheap as you'd like, really. And I think the best part about it too is that it's not like it's this small subculture. You know, there's a ton of people out there doing it now. Since I was in such a vulnerable position and like willing to put myself out there to couch surf, and I saw how great they treated me, it just like helps propagate that network. Like now, as soon as I have my own place to host and share, like I'll host people just because it's like its own pay it forward system for travelers, which is sweet. Like, yeah, definitely something that's going to benefit the world for sure.
Yeah, you know, it's crazy is I did Airbnb, and I'm making money off people staying with me, and they still loved it. You know, I showed them around town, and a lot of times I was breaking even because I was driving them everywhere and buying them meals and stuff. So I was kind of breaking even. But the point is, I initially, when they booked their room, they think I'm making money, and even they're so grateful of even me hosting them and getting paid to do it. They often offered me, come stay with me if you're ever in Copenhagen, or you know what. Yeah. And it was crazy that people are just so thankful and grateful if you take care of them, that even if you're getting paid to do it, they want to pay it forward on the other end. So yeah, no, it's a really cool culture.
Yeah, I think it's so much more beneficial and down to earth than the whole hotel system. It's kind of like doing our own part to dismantle that whole monopoly and racket, you know. And it's yeah, I mean
and the big taxes.
I think it obviously it depends on the person, and hotels are definitely necessary in some cases, I would say. But I would say the majority of people probably like to get in with a local and have them tell them about what's going on, where they're at or whatever, than as opposed to just showing up to a hotel that's been sterilized and, you know, 1,500 plus people have slept in it in that year leading up to that time or whatever. So.
Yeah, a
Would you
local
rather go visit a friend or stay in a hotel?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, like a local's cooler than a concierge for information.
Yeah. Right.
But Sean, why don't you touch on I guess what we've already touched on, which is what the Free Academy means to you. For me, you know, it kind of meant this informal learning and this ability for us to be teachers and students. And Mike touched on, you know, his frustration with that and read his journal or his essay that is in his book, Sailboat Diaries. What was some of the things that it means to you?
Right. So, yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about this all day, kind of leading up to it, and I think the most important part of the Free Acad in general has been like using it as a vehicle to develop these sort of ideas and exchanges amongst all of us, even if like I don't know, I don't necessarily hold like the institution per se, like the Free Acad, as something that's greater than anything else we have, but like the actions that have come about through it are like what have really changed my life, you know. And I think if we didn't have some sort of you know, central, it's like this central objective institution, not necessarily an institution though, that we've all agreed upon that we want to contribute to. Like I think if we had that, it would, or didn't have that rather, it would be much more difficult for us to organize and kind of get this feeling like we're all on the same team. And you know, it started with just a couple of like local close friends, and you know, with Jeff and Magic and everybody else that we've met in the past couple of years, like you can see how useful and how much of a tool, like how much of a utility it has become for us to develop these ideas and kind of you know, approach this whole conversation, which, you know, entails so many different subjects. Yeah, and yeah, it's a bit long-winded, but you get what I mean. Like, it's been great as a tool to develop these ideas and go forward with each other and learn more. It's like exponential growth.
If you guys don't mind, I have the last thing I actually wrote in the book was kind of right on the same page. So if you don't mind, I'll just read a little paragraph real quick. But it's called Freedom Cells and Freedom Hubs. I said, there's something really cool about medium-sized groups, something you rarely see in smaller and larger groups. A vibrant mix of openness and direction that enables creativity and productivity. Groups of too few can't exploit economies of scale to get things done, and groups of too many suffer from the diffusion of responsibility and conformity bias. And then I talked about how I've been thinking about those ever since John Bush mentioned, oh my God, is it Tyler?
Yeah.
Well, I'll fill you in just a second. But I drew a relationship with this idea from Kurt Vonnegut's book, Cat's Cradle, and he had this idea of a karass. And a karass is a spontaneously forming group joined by unpredictable links that works together as a unit to get things done. And as Vonnegut describes it, it's a team that does God's will without ever discovering what they are doing. It says humanity is organized into many such teams. We can try to discover the limits of our karass and the nature of the work God Almighty has had it to do, but such investigations are bound to be incomplete. And then he talked about what's called a wampeter, and he said every karass has a wampeter, just like every wheel has a hub. So the idea is every karass orbits around a wampeter, but a wampeter can be anything, and the orbits are majestic. The majestic chaos of a spiral nebula. The orbits are spiritual orbits, not physical ones. And wampeters come and wampeters go. At any time, a given karass will have one wampeter waxing in importance and one waning. So to me, the Free Academy is kind of the wampeter. It's just it's 3 words, and it's a way of combining us and giving us something to kind of orbit around. And like he says, it's not a physical orbit. We're not circling around anything on the Earth. Although we are, it's cool. If you drew our maps, like we all intertwine and touch each other, then go back out, and then we come back together and, you know, hang out in person. So that's what really gets me excited about having just this. It's just a phrase, you know. It's the Free Academy. It can be whatever we want it to be, but for me, it's kind of a pivot point in this kind of orbit of our spiritual minds and everything. What do you think, Tyler? Real quick, I'll catch you up. We first discussed what the Free Academy meant to each of us and what we hope to accomplish kind of with this concept or whatever it is, this institution. Although, like Sean said, it's not, what is a real institution? You know, what does it even mean? But then we talked about travel for a little bit and where we've all been kind of in the recent history and how we've been traveling on the cheap. Seems to be a theme that got hit on a few times, and also where we were trying to go. So what do you think, Tyler? What's the Free Academy mean to you?
Wow, there's so much pressure being
Don't worry
live.
about it.
Like, say something profound, my friends. The whole world is watching you when really, yeah, maybe like 6 people across the globe. Yeah, the Free Academy, I don't know. It's my, I guess I'll speak to my personal point. It's my sort of escape from the structures of like the academic world where like the academy, like the sort of the expensive academy, right, which is supposed to be diametrically opposed in some sense from the free academy. The expensive academy is like working off of this tradition, right, and it has all this infrastructure and it has sort of like a hierarchical, um, I guess, structure within it, right? So like the free academy for me is just the escape away from that, and I think it's like it probably has a lot to do with the fact that that structure, like it sort of like dangles a carrot in front of me, right? Like if I'm speaking from a personal space, right? Like it dangles a carrot in front of me, but at the end of the day, I realize that you're just chasing after another object, and where like the free academy, right? Hopefully, it doesn't turn into that, right? And it's just this sort of this thing that you fall back on, and that you're kind of implicitly involved with. Like as if the rug has been put underneath you without really knowing it, to sort of turn a phrase like the rug gets pulled out from underneath you, like to turn that around. So yeah, like it's more of a way of like, and I'll make reference to something that I've been reading on a lot lately. It's more a way of truly following the Tao, right, as opposed to this sort of like this Confucian model, which like the expensive academy embodies, right? This sort of like you have to find a role, you have to find a particular area of research that you can't really sort of like drift too far away from, because otherwise you become unintelligible to those people that you're supposed to be writing to, and so on and so forth. And there's right, and it's like you move from like undergraduate to graduate student to sort of like postdoc to like lecturer to sort of tenure professor to professor emeritus to like provost to president, and so on and so forth. And so like the free academy to me is more of a way of spontaneously acting in my life. And now, right, like that like leaves us with the question, like, why should we value the one over the other? And then I'm kind of at a loss. But I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess there's just like it's just a romantic notion, I guess, to talk about freedom and all of that stuff. So maybe it's. I mean, like, I don't know. Maybe I can hand it over to you. Why should we care to be
One, well, looking at you from the outside, one brought you, one of those academies brought you into high-level academics and interacting with some pretty important figures in, say, San Francisco and the philosophy world within the States and stuff. And the other one brought you to another extreme, like out in the ocean in the States. And, yeah, so it's just like they're two great mind expanders and personal expanders as well, too, like showing that are just showing you your capabilities, and now it's just time to run with them and see where else it takes you.
Right, and that's like probably the biggest mistake is like I automatically want to assume that that sort of like the one is good and the one is bad, right? Like instead of like maybe ascending to this higher level which looks at both of them and says that they're in a necessary dance with one another, and that's just what constitutes my life, right? So, like, I think that sort of that should be a warning to all of us.
Right. Could be a false dichotomy, too, because you could, something else could come up above where you juggle all three, or come about, rather, where you juggle all three, and, like, you start becoming a master salsa dancer, and you're in the free acad and a master salsa dancer and a fucking professor. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
Or maybe the master salsa dancer is just one part of an infinite free academy. But I liked what you said, which is that the free academy to you, one of the first things you said, I think, if I'm not misquoting you, was that it was, whereas academia, you're pursuing these things typically for a very obvious and finite goal or position, for example. the Free Academy was a little bit more you're doing it for its own sake almost, or just for the passion of it, or I think you made the statement that one of them has a very specific purpose and you're always doing it chasing a carrot, whereas one of them is just I don't know, for some sort of internal or the passion that you just get from doing it in its own right as opposed to for something else. Is that?
Yeah. And what's strange is it's like that's like if you look at the history of like the academy, right, which I was referring to as the expensive academy, that's like originally what it started out with, or as, right. This is coming presumably from like ancient Greece. You know, Plato started the academy, and you know, and that even dates back to sort of, you know, like the Pythagorean cults and all of these people that were coming before that, right. It was supposed to be like a sort of like an organization of people who were like, I don't know, concerned with how to live the good life. And but it's like nowadays, you know, you can still treat the expensive academy like that, and it can still be an end in itself, right? But sort of like, I think the word to emphasize there is that it runs the risk of becoming an object that you can cling to, right? And this is like presumably the source of most of our frustrations or dukkha, or like sufferings, right? And so, like, I think that it lends itself to that more easily than something like the Free Academy, because it has that solid structure, right? And because there's so much competition going on within it, because it is a market, right, at the end of the day. And so, right, it's not to downplay it, because people can still be fulfilled at the end of the day having pursued an academic life, right? But it's just like you need to be very careful, because you can fall into that trap of like wanting that status, or like wanting sort of that sort of name out there, and so on and so forth. And yeah, like the Free Academy is nice because it's just something like de facto, right? It's like you just sort of like, we're always already a part of it, right? And so it's like things like this, you know, I'm speaking from a very honest space here, not to say that I don't speak from an honest place when I'm like in the expensive academy, right? But this is a bit more different. This is more existentially driven, and sort of like we don't have to discuss sort of very, very like a defined subject matters with sort of all of this jargon that like alienates the whole rest of the world, you know. So,
you could be dropped on another planet, and the Free Academy would still be relevant.
Right.
I'm sorry, say that again? My phone just freaked out and started talking to me.
I was just saying that you could be dropped onto another planet, and the Free Academy would still be 100% relevant.
Yeah.
This is like Mike was saying, a hub for the exchange of ideas, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of that, it was founded on an uninhabited island, so almost like a different planet.
Well, maybe it was founded upon all of our, you know, births. You know what? Maybe it doesn't have an explicit founding date.
Founded on the development of the prefrontal cortex. So.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of arbitrary wherever you draw the point.
Hey, well, that's the great thing. We can start signing up members that are from the 1200s that are all dead. You know, look at us. We got 1 billion members, or 1 trillion.
Socrates.
Sure, 99% of them are dead, but that doesn't matter. We still encompass all the leftovers that they gave us.
For sure.
Hey, Facebook counts theirs, I'm sure. You die, you still count.
Right.
Yeah.
Still an alumni.
Kind of the formal apparatus, I guess, of the expensive academy, and how you can get sucked into thinking of it as an object. That's really one of the reasons I kind of tried to focus on there is no building for the Free Academy, at least not at first. Like, the academy is not a hut, it's not walls, it's not a roof, you know, it's not a place,
right.
You know, it's in our minds, and we can carry it anywhere. So like Jeff said, we can have it on a different planet, we can have it on an uninhabited island, and who's to
all
say
simultaneously too.
What's that, Sean?
I said all simultaneously too, on another planet, on the island, you know.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Right.
For sure. Oh, well, since Tyler got in, how about we discuss our plans for San Francisco? So we were talking about that with Jeff and Jared might be interested in trying to meet up with us if we do this whole van thing. So what are you thinking? Have you looked at any more on Craigslist? Like the $1,000 to $1,500 range looks pretty sweet.
Yeah, I haven't looked since the link that you sent me yesterday. I think maybe.
You still there?
Uh-oh.
Well, Mike, why don't you, while we're waiting for Tyler to come back, why don't you take over with what you guys had talked about a little bit?
Cool. So the idea is, well, I'm going to be going to California on January 7th, so like 5 days from now, and it starts out a family vacation, and then I just asked them, you just have to buy me a one-way. I'm going to stay behind when y'all leave, is what I said. And so I'm going to be hanging in LA, and not exactly sure where yet. I kind of looked for some places to squat on satellite images, and I think I found a good one kind of near Dodger Stadium. But anyways, I'll be going to open mic nights to read from my book and kind of share the Sailboat Diaries adventure with people out there. And then next, I'm catching a bus up to San Francisco. And at that point, I wasn't sure exactly where I was going to go next. I had this Arizona idea, and Acapulco is kind of the only like hard deadline on my calendar. But I mentioned the idea of buying a cheap van to Tyler, and he says he's pretty free right now, and he's on board. So we were looking at getting something cheap, taking advantage of these low gas prices, and mix of camping and going to different events where we'll hopefully meet real life people and share some of our ideas and learn from others. Whole kind of traveling free academy campus idea. And I'm really excited about it. I don't know about you, Tyler. What are you thinking? You there yet?
Well, I think it's freezing out.
Ah,
Oh, real quick though, I had an idea that I wanted to share, like about Free Acad. When y'all were talking about, when Jeff said it could happen on Mars, I think it really fits the whole decentralization movement that's going on at the moment. It's decentralized learning, decentralized idea exchange. Essentially, we've created a marketplace for it. This is the beginning. There's tons of them happening simultaneously. But yeah, this is one that we've kind of formalized, and yeah.
a little bit. Formalized a tiny, tiny bit. We gave it a name.
Right. And it's, we've used a decentralized entity like the internet to make it that much more accessible. So I think, yeah, it's like, it just very much fits what our lifetimes will, our lifetime advocacy will become, I would assume, So
Absolutely.
yeah, I think it's a really, really solid model for how to kind of, go forward and what we'll do moving forward. So it's exciting.
Are you suggesting that there's an isomorphism between kind of what we're trying to do with the Free Academy and kind of what's happening in the political atmosphere around the world?
Wow, yeah, like with Bitcoin, internet, yeah. I guess like
in all domains or something you meant to say.
Yeah. We've just kind of done it with ideas, I guess, and voluntary exchange.
Yeah.
For sure. I think
I'd agree.
The peer-to-peer nature of it, it's non-hierarchical. Decentralized.
Meritocracy.
Yeah. And it's totally, I think, grown off these models of, say, BitTorrent, Bitcoin, just seeing that, like,
right.
You don't need this pyramid structure to gather ideas or to give them back out. Like, you just have a ring. Everybody tells each other what they think, and the most useful nodes and useful, I don't know what that even means here, but the people who want to participate the most, they'll end up being more, I don't know. Anyways, more information can flow through certain nodes depending on how useful each other finds those nodes. And here where we're 6 people, it's pretty much we all just contribute as much as we want. But if this scales and say we have thousands of people one day, we might expect something like the Pareto principle to apply, where maybe 80% of the people only contribute 20% of the content, and vice versa. 20% of people contribute 80% of the content, but it still gives everyone the ability to pick up the things that they're particularly interested in, and maybe even form subgroups within it. And we'll have someday free Academy webinars, maybe just on open source hardware, or just on 3D printing guns or something, or printing cheap books and magazines and stuff. That's something I really want to get my friend Tracy involved, and Kaylin as well, because they're able to print any kind of document you want. So it makes all of us publishers, which we could already do it with the web, but there's something to physically holding something that it changes the game. And like we were talking about physically meeting up in person, it's this is useful, but seeing people and being in the same room is just that much more effective communication. And I think that same kind of thing happens with physically bound books or other media as well. And it's something you can hold, you can put it on your table, you can look at it every night and see it's right there, and you need to read it, or you want to email the author back or whatever. So I'm really excited just to, like you all said, have this network, and we're bringing the right people in. They're wanting to get involved already, and it's just so much fun. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah. So to go back, I love the nodes that you mentioned there, though. It's the free market of ideas. Who the people who are putting things out that people value and respect and find interesting are obviously, things are going to funnel through them. So it's like its own little free market of information, even though it's completely free. But one thing I wanted to get back to was the van idea. So you guys are talking about getting a van, maybe somewhere between $1,000 to $1,500, driving it from San Francisco to Flagstaff, where maybe we'll check out the Earthship, etc. that Kokesh is and his fiance, I believe, not girlfriend, fiance, are working on together. And then maybe you guys are talking about driving that van from there down to Acapulco for Anarchapulco. What do you think the timeline would be on getting to Flagstaff? So what date roughly, if you guys did leave from San Francisco, would you just guess? And then how long do you think the trip all the way down to Acapulco would take?
Okay. Well, I'm going to be in San Francisco on the 21st. So maybe sorry, the 16th. So then.
And then plan to leave the 26th. Yeah.
Huh?
Sorry, you were gonna touch on
So
that.
maybe we'll spend a few days to a week looking for vans, I imagine, and then I'm free to take off as soon as possible, and I think Tyler's just looking to sublease his room, and then down to Flagstaff. It's less than a day. It's maybe 10 hours or something. I haven't looked, but less than a day for sure. And then we could hang out there for 2 to 3 weeks, I imagine. And then, that doesn't have to happen, and we could move around too. If we're in a van, we could go hit up other nearby things. And then from there, it's probably a long day down to Acapulco, but probably less than 24 hours, I think.
It's 31 on Google Maps.
15th or so?
From Flagstaff?
From Flagstaff?
Yeah, 31 hours.
Cool.
What I was thinking.
Fuck.
Just had an idea, and then we're kind of like a positive cancer. As soon as, and especially once we all have, as time goes on and we collect more resources, think how many more projects and initiatives we can get involved with, and people that we're going to be getting involved with, and just extending this conversation out to those people and bringing them in. Cancer cells.
That's a cool phrase, positive cancer.
Huh?
I was saying that's a cool phrase, positive cancer.
Why is cancer bad? Cancer brings you radically before your death, and it seems like that's really the only way to truly start living your life is when you realize how imminent it is. So maybe all cancer is positive unless you suffer.
All it is the uncontrollable division of cells, and I think
it's kind of it's just that's what you did you just say it's all cancer is the uncontrollable growth of cells, right?
Right.
Replication of cells. And so I think in some ways, at least a lot of us that are having take a little bit of issue with governments or this hierarchical structure. Maybe we mean cancer in the purest sense. That's actually a good thing. We're the cancer to the government, and maybe, but to the individuals perhaps, it's a positive force. But it just depends on the perspective there.
Right.
I kind of like the idea of being a virus rather than a cancer, because cancer is kind of the malfunctioning of one set of DNA versus, well, like y'all are saying, it's malfunctioning subjective. But viruses work in lots of individuals across a species. So got a little mimetic viral epidemic going on here across the world, and connect each other in new ways, hopefully, or really just reflect what other people are already doing. Like so many people have said, this isn't anything like very special or new. It's not out of the ordinary, but it's our own version of it, and we can push on it, while we got some steam going. But hey, maybe this is a good chance to go ahead and close out, because I know this video is running long, and I think we hit on a lot of really good topics. But I would love to talk to you all again really soon, and this was a whole lot of fun, so I think we should try to make it kind of a regular thing.
Yeah.
Well, it already is, Michael.
Right. We're on episode 4, so that's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's an irregular thing.
Rolling.
It's a regular thing.
Right.
Yeah. The
Cool,
freak
guys.
had heart
Well,
palpitations.
It happens nonstop. We just only record it sometimes, huh?
Right. Well, that's
Yeah.
part for getting that viral action going is to record these things and share some of the excitement and also the ideas. It's the shit
Right.
is.
And yet, like, worst comes to worst, we can all watch this later in life and just be happy that we talked and recorded it. Like, so there's literally nothing to lose from doing this.
Absolutely. Well, how about with that? Let's shut her down, and I'll talk to you guys later.
See y'all,
All right,
everyone.
guys.